Imagine you're an astronomer working the night shift at the most powerful radio telescope on Earth. For decades, this dish has been pointed at the sky, scanning thousands of stars, millions of frequencies, listening for anything, any whisper, any signal, any proof that we're not alone. And tonight, like every night before it, the screen shows nothing. Just static, just silence. An ocean of silence so deep it should terrify you, because the universe is 14 billion years old. There are 2 trillion galaxies. There are more stars than grains of sand on every beach on this planet combined. The math says the sky should be screaming with alien civilizations. But it's not, it's quiet. And a growing number of scientists think they finally know why. Every civilization that ever rose in this universe already destroyed itself. And we might be next. Let that satisfying thought ruin your evening for a moment. Because this isn't science fiction. This is one of the most respected solutions to a problem that has haunted physics for over 70 years. A problem so disturbing that the physicist Enrico Fermi once sat down at lunch with colleagues, looked up at the sky, and asked a question that no one has been able to answer since. Where is everybody? The galaxy is old enough that even a slow-moving civilization should have colonized every corner of it by now. We should see their megastructures blocking starlight. We should hear their transmissions leaking across the void. We should find their probes drifting through our solar system. But we find nothing. We hear nothing. And the silence, when you actually sit with it, is the most frightening sound in the universe. At first glance, space looks like a place of wonder. You see the photographs, the nebulae glowing in jewel tones, the spiral arms of galaxies sweeping across the dark like brushstrokes from something divine. It looks beautiful. It looks inviting. It looks like a canvas waiting for life to fill it. But something is deeply, fundamentally wrong with that picture. Because when you look closer, when you actually listen, the canvas is empty. Not just here and there. Everywhere. In every direction, at every frequency, across every wavelength we've ever checked. The European Space Agency has surveyed over 1 billion stars. NASA's Kepler mission found that nearly every star in the galaxy has planets. The conditions for life aren't rare. They're everywhere. Life should have had billions of years and billions of chances to arise, evolve, build, and expand. And yet the universe looks untouched, pristine, like a house that was built for a party, but nobody ever showed up. But here's the problem. Maybe they did show up. Maybe they rose just like us. Maybe on 1,000 different worlds, in 1,000 different eras, civilizations looked up at their own skies and wondered the same thing we wonder now. Maybe they built cities, developed technology, split the atom and reached for the stars. And maybe one by one, every single one of them hit a wall. Not a wall of physics, not a wall of distance, a wall of themselves. Scientists call it the Great Filter, and it is one of the most chilling concepts in all of modern thought. The idea is simple. Somewhere between dead chemistry and a galaxy-spanning civilization, there is a barrier. A step so dangerous, so difficult, so catastrophic that almost nothing gets past it. The question that keeps researchers up at night is where that filter sits. Is it behind us, something miraculous that already happened in our past, like the leap from single cells to complex life? Or is it ahead of us, something we haven't hit yet, something waiting? And this is where things change, because the evidence is starting to point forward. Think about what a civilization needs to reach the stars. It needs energy, enormous amounts of it. It needs to master the forces of nature. It needs to control its own climate, its own biology, its own weapons. And every single step along that ladder introduces a new way to die, not just as individuals, but as an entire species, all at once, in ways that leave no survivors and no trace. Look at us. We've been a technological civilization for barely 2 centuries. And we've already developed nuclear weapons capable of ending human civilization in an afternoon. We've already begun altering the chemistry of our own atmosphere in ways we can't reverse. We've already engineered pathogens in laboratories and built artificial intelligence systems whose long-term behavior we cannot predict. We've had nuclear weapons for 80 years, and in that time we've come within minutes of global annihilation on at least 6 documented occasions. 6 times the survival of every person on this planet came down to one decision, one officer, one moment of hesitation. And we act like we passed some kind of test. We didn't pass anything. We just haven't failed yet. But it gets worse, because nuclear weapons might be the easy part. As a civilization advances, the power it can access grows exponentially, but the wisdom to wield that power does not grow at the same rate. This is the core of the filter. Technology scales faster than responsibility. A species that can engineer genes can also engineer plagues. A species that can harness fusion can also build weapons that make nuclear bombs look like firecrackers. A species that can build thinking machines can also lose control of them. And every single one of these thresholds is something we are approaching right now, in this century, in this generation. Now imagine that pattern playing out not once, but millions of times across millions of worlds. A civilization rises on a rocky planet orbiting a quiet yellow star. It develops language, agriculture, industry. It splits the atom. It changes its climate. It builds machines smarter than itself. And then, in a geological instant, in a blink so fast it wouldn't even register in the fossil record of its own planet, it's gone. Not conquered, not absorbed, just gone. Snuffed out by the very tools that made it powerful, and the planet goes quiet again. The forests grow back, the oceans settle, and from a distance, from a telescope 1,000 light years away, that world looks exactly like every other lifeless rock in the galaxy. No signal, no structure, no trace, just silence. No, but that's not even the worst part. The worst part is what the silence tells us about our own future. Because if the great filter is ahead of us, then we are not special. We are not the exception. We are just early in the same story that has already ended in extinction everywhere else. We are walking the same path, hitting the same milestones, developing the same technologies, making the same mistakes. And the fact that we feel confident, that we feel like we'll figure it out, that we believe our rationality will save us, might be the most predictable part of the pattern. Every civilization probably felt that way. Every civilization probably believed it was the one that would make it through. And here's what makes this truly haunting. We wouldn't even know if we were wrong. The great filter doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive as a single dramatic catastrophe with a countdown clock and a hero's chance to save the world. It arrives as a series of decisions that each seem reasonable in isolation. It arrives as short-term thinking compounding over decades. It arrives as a slow erosion of the conditions that make complex life possible, so gradual that by the time you realize what's happening, the window to act has already closed. It doesn't look like the end of the world, it looks like Tuesday. NASA's James Webb Space Telescope is now powerful enough to analyze the atmospheres of planets orbiting distant stars. Within our lifetimes, we may be able to detect the chemical signatures of life or the chemical signatures of its collapse. Imagine pointing that telescope at a world and finding an atmosphere choked with carbon dioxide and methane, the remnants of a civilization that burned through its own biosphere exactly the way we're burning through ours. Imagine finding the chemical fingerprint of industrial pollution on a planet where no industry exists anymore. A ghost world. A tombstone written in atmospheric chemistry. Some astrobiologists believe we'll find dozens of them, hundreds. Worlds that bloomed and burned, one after another, like candles in the dark. But it gets even deeper than that. Because there is another possibility that almost nobody talks about, and it's the one that unsettles scientists the most. What if the filter isn't a single event at all? What if it's not a war, or a climate collapse, or a rogue AI? What if the filter is simply the nature of intelligent life itself? What if every species smart enough to build a civilization is also by definition too aggressive, too short-sighted, too tribal, too self-interested to sustain one? What if intelligence, the very thing we consider our greatest gift, is actually a dead end? An evolutionary mistake that burns bright and fast and always consumes itself? That would mean the universe isn't empty despite intelligence. It's empty because of it. And so you sit there in your observatory, staring at a screen full of nothing, and the silence takes on a different shape. It's not an absence, it's an answer. The universe did produce life. It did produce civilizations. It did produce beings who looked up and wondered and reached. And they are all gone. Every last one of them. The silence isn't a mystery, it's a graveyard. And right now, in this moment, on this small blue world, we are alive in the middle of it, still building, still burning, still convincing ourselves that we are different. But the universe has seen this story before. It has seen it 1,000,000,000 times, and it always ends the same way. The only question left is whether we're the civilization that finally breaks the pattern, or whether 1,000 years from now, some other species on some other world will point their telescope at our sun and find nothing but silence and wonder where everybody went.